just the quietness of being underwater, the meticulousness of like building your kit and planning your dive and like going and diving with friends. I found it a very social thing at the same time as it being very meditative and peaceful.
Off-Gassing, a scuba podcast with host Nick Hogel. Originally from South London, Natalie Turner-Blackman became certified during her gap year in 2015. Earning her open water certification while at a marine conservation program, she instantly fell in love with the aquatic environment. Returning home to the cold waters of England did not dissuade her from pursuing this newfound interest. After completing her degree in marine and natural history photography, she went on to a career as a cinematographer. Commercial diving training, long hours and hard work, making connections, moving into the silent world of diving, and much more. Please enjoy. Natalie, how are you doing this wonderful, brisk morning?
Yeah, it's pretty cold, I'm not going to lie. I'm based in Bristol, so we've had lots of hail this morning, missing some tropical diving, that's for sure.
Hailstorms can definitely be a pain, that is for sure. But I'd like to welcome you to the podcast, so welcome. And I'll jump right in. So my first question for you is, tell me how and why you became a scuba diver.
Sure, so I first got into diving in 2015. I did quite the usual thing in England. We have something called a gap year between college and university where you get to go and travel for a year. I was pretty like done with normal education by the time I finished college and wanted to have a break. So I booked a ticket to Thailand, as a lot of students do, and went and learnt to dive as part of a marine conservation program out there with a company called Corsi. They're based in Koh Phangan. And through that, I was able to do my open water and advanced. And then I stayed with them for 6 weeks doing marine conservation, looking at coral bleaching, learning lots of different fish identification, and really like getting to grips with the underwater world. My first breaths was with an amazing dive school out there, and we went off to this beautiful dive site called Sail Rock. And I'm not joking, on my first dive, there was a whale shark that turned up, and I was just like, is this what it's going to be like every single time? Obviously, in my naivety, thinking that this massive whale shark is just going to turn up at every single dive and it's going to be amazing. But it was definitely just like a one-time lucky thing. But it made me just completely fall in love with the underwater world. Like, I couldn't believe that I was able to see these creatures and be a part of it. It really did feel like I was going into a completely different world, and that I was super privileged to be able to do that. And so I then stayed with Corsi for 6 weeks, learning all about coral bleaching. I learned lots of different like coral species and how to identify them. We were like laying out transects and trying to identify the level of bleaching on each coral and which ones are being worse affected, and looking at different dive sites and comparing them. So I was really able to get my teeth into marine conservation and diving through that. And then all good things come to an end.
I absolutely love that. I actually participated in a marine conservation project. Was it like 2018, 2019? And I absolutely loved it. I had so much fun. And it's actually something that I need to get back into. I keep telling myself every year, like, oh, I'm going to go sign up for this project, go sign up for that project. So hopefully I'll be able to get back to it. So you finished up with the marine conservation project, and what did you do next?
I left Thailand, came back to England, and was like, I really, really want to do this. This is like something that I'm really interested in. So I started cold water diving in the UK, which was a massive shock after diving with whale sharks in Thailand and having the best time of my life. But I was super, super into diving. I really loved just the quietness of being underwater, the meticulousness of like building your kit and planning your dive and like going and diving with friends. I found it a very social thing at the same time as it being very meditative and peaceful. So I was just really, really hooked on it. And I did my rescue as soon as I got back to the UK, which then just gave me a different view of like how to help people underwater if they're struggling, or if you need to tow them when you're back on the surface if they've got tired. And it just gave me a bit more responsibility under the water, which I really enjoyed. At the same time as this, I'd started my graduate degree. So I'd moved down to Cornwall.
I completely agree about the rescue course. I actually always will tell people that if anything, they should, if they don't plan on doing anything, at least make it to rescue, because it will change the way you think as a diver. Because at this point, you're not necessarily thinking about yourself, you're thinking about other divers and how their reactions. So, no, I can completely agree with the rescue course. Just a quick question though, where are you from originally?
I'm originally from South London. It's quite an urban upbringing, and I couldn't wait to escape London. I was like, I'm out of here. So I moved to Cornwall to do my graduate degree in marine and natural history photography. I was definitely more into the marine side. I couldn't wait to like start taking pictures underwater, and Cornwall's a great place to do that. You've got lots of little critters, you've got nudibranchs, you've got lobsters, crabs, you've got dogfish, you've got all the beautiful kelp forests as well. So it's a great place to go to do an undergraduate degree. I had, yeah, basically started my degree. I'd never taken pictures underwater. I'd just randomly chosen that I thought that was a great degree to do for 3 years. It was a great place to live. It sounded like a lot of fun. I hadn't really put much thought into why I was going to do it at that time. I just thought, you know what, that sounds like a great place to spend 3 years. It's something that I feel passionate about and I probably can do quite well in. So I'm just going to go do that and give it a go. Um, and then I got into like my second year of university and I was absolutely loving it, and was going out in Cornwall and taking pictures and just spending a lot of time in the water really. And then I decided that whilst I was at university, I was going to do my dive master internship. So on top of all the studies, on top of all the diving I was already doing for university, I then decided to go and spend my weekends diving in cold quarries, trying to do like DSDs and teach people and help out with the instructors. And it was absolutely freezing half the time in the cold quarries in the UK. Like, it is so unbelievably cold. So it was a real shock to not have any fish around. And it was dark and really cold and really not that exciting. Quarry diving in the UK isn't great. We try and make it interesting by putting like planes and tunnels in and boats and things to dive around to try and entice you in, but it's never really done it for me. But it's a great place for training, which is mainly what I use it for now.
I'm always curious to know how everybody's professional route went. How was your dive master course? How did you like it?
I did my dive master internship over the course of a year. So I did quite slowly just to manage with studies, and the weather in England isn't always great. So at the time, like weekend diving was cancelled or the quarry was fully booked. So it was quite a slow process to get to my dive master, which was fine with me. And then it meant just by the time I was finished with university, if I had always imagined I would immediately go away back to Thailand where I could then dive master. And that was like sort of what I'd always then planned. I was going to maybe do my instructor, but I wasn't too sure. And so I wanted to get it done during university. So I was ready to leave basically. And then I didn't leave. I didn't leave at all. I took a completely different direction by the end of my final year of university. And I am now working in underwater television, which is like had always been probably a deep-seated goal of mine. Like, now I look back on it, maybe I was always working towards this, but when you're in the moment, you're trying to learn all these new skills, you're not really sure what path your life is taking you on. And now I look back on it and I was like, everything I've done up until this moment has like led me to where I am today.
Oh, that's a bummer that you didn't make it back to Thailand, but underwater television, that doesn't sound so bad. How did you find yourself getting into that?
So, yeah, I finished my third year of university and I'd seen this company called Esprit Film and Television. They're based not far from Bristol, they're actually up in Gloucester, so about 40 minutes away. I just beeline for them in third year of university. I was like, I want to go and work there. They have like an amazing selection of underwater cinema cameras. They are the leading people in the UK for underwater cinema rental, DSLR rental. They have a huge selection of cameras. They make their own housings. They have a huge selection of weird and crazy underwater grip, from really cool time lapse sliders to pole cams. Like anything you want to do underwater, these people will figure out how to do. So I was like, I want to go there. I really love photography. I really love making films. I've just done this degree. I've got my dive master. That's where I'm going to go. I didn't get a job with them straight off the bat. I was frantically emailing them at every chance I could get, like, can I come in for work experience? Can I do anything? Can I like come in for a week? I'll do it unpaid. Like, I just want to like try and learn stuff. Like, you know, as you come out of university, you're like desperately trying to get in with the company that you really want to work for. And I managed to get a week's work experience off the back of actually doing a course with them. So they occasionally run these courses called Set Up, Test and Orientate. They're basically shortened to STO, but that's what it means, with a partner company called Gates. Gates basically are the owners of underwater housings for Red Cinema Systems. It's very similar to like Nauticam. Gates is another version, and they specialize in underwater film and TV. So I had seen that they were putting on this course, and I was like, I hadn't managed to get some work experience by that time. So I was like, I'm going to pay to go on this course and put myself in front of them and just keep asking them whilst I'm on the course, which was the best decision I ever made. I was like, I couldn't afford to do this course at the time. I was just like, I'm just going to have to try and magic up the money from somewhere and just go and hope that this works out.
What was the course like? The structure of the course?
It was like 3 days. You get one day in the water, actually having a play with the housings and the cameras and seeing how they function. And you have 2 days of theory and setting up three different housings. It's quite a full on course. You get to learn quite a lot from it. You get a lot of hands on time. You get to meet cameramen who are working in the industry or had been working in the industry a really long time at that point. They were great mentors and people to talk to about how to try and break in. And I also then managed to meet the owner of Esprit. So I was like, this is my moment now. This is where I'm just going to be like, hi, I'm Natalie. Like, do you need someone to come and help you? At the time, I was actually the only woman on this course as well. So I like stood out like a sore thumb. I'm 5'3", and I just turned up and I was trying to lug all these like heavy camera housings around. So I really did stick out like a sore thumb. So I was like, okay, I'm going to use this to my advantage and be like, can I please come in for some work experience? I really want to work for your company.
Oh, I absolutely love it. You just got to jump at any given opportunity, right? So how did it work out? Did you just immediately start working for them?
I didn't hear it straight away. And I was actually in Iceland on holiday for the week after. And I got this random phone call, and it was from the owner saying, can you come in next week for a week? So I was like, it's worked. My plan has finally worked. And I went in and literally worked so hard during that week. It was insane. I wanted to learn as much as possible. I didn't know if I was going to get invited back. I didn't know if I was ever going to like have another chance again. So I worked so hard in that week. And then that was it. I was in then to the company. They really like brought me on and nurtured me. I then stayed there for 2 years. So that doing that one course and put like paying for that one course put me in a position where I could then have a job and like learn all of this crazy underwater filming stuff. It was great. Then through them, they helped me with my commercial media training. So in the UK, we have to do something called a Part 4 commercial HSE training, and it basically teaches you how to dive. Ours was very tailored around media, but you can do it for archaeological training, you can do it for scientific. Or your first steps also to do like offshore training if you're into, working on oil rigs or things like that. So this is like the first level.
What kind of stuff are you learning in this course?
Teaches you how to use like full face masks and underwater communications. You do some like crazy underwater task building skills. You have to tie a knot in a scaffolding pole and send it to the surface and then yank on the rope 3 times so they can send down something else. And you have to then build this like triangle scaffolding thing. And it's all these like crazy underwater tasks. It was great fun. I loved every second of it, weirdly. It was like, I just think this is great. It's like 2 weeks of hanging out with your friends doing weird underwater building tasks. Like, great, I love it. And then you do some like solo dives, you do some night dives, you do like a lost diver, like all of that stuff. And it just sort of like gets you ready for being more commercially minded.
What would you say some of the biggest differences are when you're diving fun recreational, as opposed to doing a commercial diving or you're on set doing a shoot?
When you're diving recreationally, the main difference that I found is like, if you want to finish a dive recreationally, you just finish a dive. It's fine. When you're commercially diving, there's a huge level of responsibility for the people around you, and also you're there to do a job. So your mindset has to be very different in the fact that actually this isn't fun, I say in inverted commas, anymore. This is your workplace. This is like you've gone to the office, but this is your office. So it's a very like strategic mindset change in how you function and how you work underwater. You're trying to be efficient. You're trying to get everything done as quickly as possible so that you have enough time to get out, rest, and then get back in. And you start to think of diving in a very different way to how your mindset was recreationally, which is a huge change. A huge change. Like, I still love diving recreationally, but my mindset when I dive now is very commercial. And I like to try and get things done very strategically and know that you're there for a job. So I was still at a spree during this time. This was like 2019, 2019, 2020, 2021. I was still at a spree trying to get as much experience as possible. I'd managed to do my commercial training through the help of them, and I was like basically ready to start going on underwater TV jobs. So just as like you have to have this media training in the UK to legally be allowed to work on set, basically, as actually in the water or as a safety diver, anything like that, you have to have this training.
So you're at a level now to where you can start picking up some of your first jobs. How were those first few experiences? How did that go?
My first job, I did a lot of like little jobs in London, like for commercials and features and things like that. Very different. And it was a good stepping stone to working in natural history, because when you start doing natural history shoots, you're like, wow, you are working a crazy amount of time. Like, animals don't wait for anything. They're going to do their thing whenever they want. They don't care. They will do it whenever they want. And like, it's very different from being on a commercial features set to being out in the field, out on location, where you're probably covered in bugs when you're topside on the boat because you're stuck in the mangroves and there's like mosquitoes and sandflies all around you. And then the only respite you get is when you're in the water from them. But at that time, you're working and you're waiting for some animal to do something. And it could be like you're out on the boat for 15 hours a day. and then you have to unload everything when you get back, and then try and pull the rushes and download all your cards, and then go to bed, and then wake up and do it all over again. But it's great fun. But so when I had started, I was still working at Spree, and I was going out onto these small jobs to try and get experience, which is great. I wasn't necessarily always diving, but I was snorkeling or working in the water. Then my first natural history job, it was a real eye-opener. It was also just the first shoot going out after COVID.
Working during or even immediately after COVID must have had its challenges. I mean, it's crazy because we look back on it now and it's almost just like a not a forgotten time, obviously, but it just seems like it was a lifetime ago. But how did it all go working post COVID?
No one really knew how it was going to work out. We all had to be separated on separate boats, basically. So communication was really difficult between our presenter team and our like natural history filming team, and it was super, super difficult. No one had any idea how we were gonna like make it work, really. Part of commercial diving is that, and working in like a media group, is that we have good communication when everyone has to be on separate boats, and you're like trying to figure out who's going to jump in next, where we're going to meet underwater, because we had to stay quite far apart from each other. It was quite difficult. I was safety diving the main camera, and we were doing these beautiful wall dives off of Plymouth that are just covered in dual anemones, and they're super, super colourful. So I was trying to like shine a light on them to like make them really pop. We were having the presenter come in, and we had full face masks, so she was actually like speaking underwater and presenting basically this amazing wall. The shoot went well. I learned a lot when I went on my first underwater natural history shoot.
Can you take me through like a typical day on shoot? What type of things are you doing?
Set up your own dive gear. Sometimes you'll be helping the cameraman set his dive gear up as well. You'll be managing the underwater filming equipment, which is normally something very, very expensive, which if it floods, it will be your fault. So it's a lot of pressure to make sure that you've vacuum checked everything and that everything is perfect. You've got all your lights set up, you've got a fresh battery in, a clean card. You've got like quite a lot of things to do. On top of that, you've actually got the managing of the dive safety, making sure the cameraman is okay, he's happy, and also don't get in the way of the shot that they're planning on doing, which was something that I did on my first dive, and all I could hear over the comms was like, "Nat, you're in the shot." I was like, great. They definitely don't want to film me. You're trying to envision where he's going to move to so you don't get in the way. You need to be this floating little fairy in the background that's ready to go in and save someone, but don't get in the way. So I learned a lot. I learned a lot about like time management, dive safety, how people actually film underwater. Like you don't really get this experience unless you get on jobs and you get to work alongside people already doing it. So I came away and I was like, okay, right, I am not as prepared as I thought I was. It might be that I feel like I'm a confident diver, but as soon as you start like task loading yourself and you've got other people you're responsible for, you start to realize, okay, right, I need to step this up. I need to step this up again. So I came away and I was like, oh, I've learned a huge amount. Great. And then I kept on working at Esprit. Esprit's been like my work home since I graduated. They've always supported me through every single step in my career, and I've always had somewhere to go back to when I've not had work, when I've been freelance, or I have needed help because I don't understand a certain bit of kit, because kit is always changing. Different cinema cameras are always coming out, different housings are always coming out, and it's a constant cycle to keep on top of all of the new technology. And my next job was working on something completely different, and I ended up working on this production for about 18 months. And again, they completely took me under their wing and nurtured me. I now look at it, I was like so lucky to get on this production because they were amazing to me.
What production was that?
That was for Prehistoric Planet 2. So I worked on the Oceans episode for that, literally religiously for 18 months. Did everything from like the kit testing, lens testing to safety diving, behind the scenes, all of the tech for it, absolutely everything. I really worked continuously through it and got to know the crew really, really well. And it was something completely different to normal natural history. It's very VFX based. That was also something that I then got experience in. It was just crazy. It was crazy, but we had the best crew ever. It was like a family. We were all such a family. It was great going away together. And we just managed to achieve so much because we were such a tight community of people that were really focused on the same output. Now that I look back at the episode, I'm just like, it was so much work. And I look at it and I'm like, oh my God, my friend helped manage that particular sequence, or I thought of something on that day that made that tiny 2-second sequence work. All of these crazy things we had to do, and it's all paid off to make this amazing 1 hour episode. It's just so cool. And then by that time, I didn't dive a huge amount on Prehistoric Planet. I was mainly underwater technical support. We had a lot of kit, and I was basically managing pretty much all of it. And so that was mainly why I was there. But, we had several underwater housings. We had lots of lights. We had lots of different quirky kit we were using. And I was basically managing all of that.
When you get hired for a shoot, do they know it's going to be, do they have a set amount of time they know that it's going to be? Or is it, we're going to go out there, get the shot, we're going to be out there for as long as need be? Is there a set amount of time, or is it just kind of open-ended?
They normally have a set time frame. Most shoots are a month, and that puts in a couple of days if there's bad weather. There's a couple of rest days in there, and everything's pretty strategically planned.
Are there ever moments where you have this whole plan put together, you go out there, you try to execute the plan, but then nothing happens, you come back with no footage?
Yeah, of course. There's been days where we've loaded everything onto the boat, and then actually we thought we can't get out this harbour because it's a little bit it's actually a bit windy, and we can't actually put all of this expensive gear and all of these people at risk because it's picking up. Or by the time we've loaded and we've got everything onto the boat, the weather's suddenly changed, and now we're like, can't do anything now. This isn't going to work. It's mainly down to wind that will stop us going out and diving, or swell, just because it's too dangerous to put heavy expensive equipment in when divers are also swimming up to the boat, and trying to manage that is the last thing you want is someone be hit on the head with a camera while they're in the water. It's just about safety management. And yeah, most of the time rain doesn't really bother us. We can go dive in the rain, but a lot of people do like the sparkly light that we get when we've got the sun shining and you've got beautiful rays coming through the water. It's mainly weather that will stop us. Other than that, or technical difficulties if the camera decides it's not having a good day, which does also happen. Yeah, that's some of the issues that we've had. I've had random things. The monitor on the camera just decided to die in the middle of a tropical island. Literally why you've been working for the last week and now I'm just getting a black screen. Completely black. Oh, you were fine yesterday. What's happened to you? That stopped us from diving, and actually the monitor had literally just died. There was no rhyme or reason to it. It had just decided I don't want to work anymore, so we had to get some other kit flown out. That put us off for a day, and then I had to find a workaround, and our workaround was ridiculous. It was actually ridiculous. By that time we had the monitor, the actual camera housing, but because there's two different sized pass-through bungs for the monitor cable to go into the housing, and we didn't have a blocking bung for the bigger one, for the bigger pass-through, we ended up diving with two monitors just back to back. So it was this absolute beast that was already too big. And then I just thought it was the only way we are going to be able to continue diving, because I managed to have this really small monitor that we bought as a backup, but it only had a small pass through. So I was like, well, we'll just have to put both of them on then, because otherwise we're going to have a massive hole in the housing, and this is our workaround for the next couple of days whilst we wait so we can continue shooting. So everyone was just like, we'll just keep on shooting, it'll be fine.
So I will have to be honest. I'm still trying to get over the fact that you were that you said whale shark on your first dive because I haven't actively seeked out a whale shark, so I know I could get out there and see one, but obviously I'm still trying to wait. But no, that must have been an absolutely beautiful moment, especially for your first dive. That must have been such a cool, amazing feeling, just spoiled right off the bat.
It was absolutely crazy. I was like, is this what it is going to be like every time? Did these open ocean animals just come into dive sites? This is what it's going to be like. But then I didn't see one for ages, and I've only ever now seen them when trying to actually seek them out, going on dive trips or for work. One has never just appeared out of thin air again. Like, that doesn't happen. The same with like manta rays. I've been diving with manta rays in Bali, and I actively went to the sites to see them. But I know people that they've just turned up on the reef. Oh, this is amazing. I'm like, it doesn't happen. A lot of the time, you have to actually go and seek out the animal that you want to see.
So, curious to know, out of the jobs that you go on, how are you finding these jobs? Is there a board somewhere, or is it, hey, you were on this last project, do you want to work on this next project? My old friend a long time ago used to say it's not what you know, it's who, and I always kind of joke around about that. So I'm just kind of curious, when you are seeking out these jobs, how are you finding them? I mean, I wouldn't think that there's a board, but I mean, who knows? Maybe is there?
No, there isn't. There really isn't. It's very much who you know. There is an element of what you know. You're not going to be asked to go on the shoot if you don't know how to work in underwater housing or how to safely pull a vacuum, make sure that it's not going to flood. But I have got the majority of my work through word of mouth and having a good relationship with a good genuine relationship. I need to actually just put in there is that like I genuinely care about the people that I work with and have really good communication and a good rapport with them. I think that comes off in my like daily work. And then I've been asked to come back. I work with the same camera men time and time over again, same camera women time and time over again. And I think that's just because I have a good rapport with people and I genuinely care about making their life easier. As an underwater camera assistant, you're there to support them and to make them feel they have everything they need and can ask you for anything. And when you do that well, you get invited back because you're making their life easier. They can get the shots that they need to make the sequence work. They can get the rest that they need because they can trust you to manage the cameras. So it then makes the whole shoot easier for everyone. And they're like, yeah, I want to work with you again because you made my life easier.
So out of these adventures, and I want to call them adventures because when you're telling me some of these stories, it just sounds like these amazing adventures. But out of all of these adventures that you've been on, is there one moment, one story, one shoot that tops them all? Sometimes I kind of hate to say it, but sometimes when we're going through what seems to be like a horrible moment at the time, when you look back on it, is one of the most memorable moments. So I guess my question is, what moments have been some highlight moments for you?
I think every single shoot has those moments. It's really like a roller coaster ride. Some days nothing will work. The animal won't turn up. The camera is doing some weird funky thing, like the monitor just going black. There'll always be a point in a shoot where something goes wrong. Yeah, it doesn't matter how prepared you are or like what you envision going into the shoot is going to be like. There will always be moments where there's going to be a surprise. Like you're working with wild animals, for one, that just want to do whatever they want to do. You're normally going for the very, very specific behavior. I try and think about it like it's like someone waiting. Imagine an animal is filming you and they're waiting for a human to scratch their nose. It's like, how long would that take for a random human to like just scratch their nose? And that's all that you need. And if you think about it, it's mental. You're waiting for a fish to do something that it's specifically known to do. It only does that thing a couple of times in a few weeks, but you have to sit there and wait. and wait for it to happen. When you actually think about it, it's crazy.
I have definitely never looked at it from that perspective. Now that I think about that, that's actually pretty funny. And just having somebody wait around for me to do some random thing that I might be known to do. So just curious, what level of diver are you now? I know that you have the commercial rating, but I'm just curious, did you keep progressing through?
So I am a dive master and commercial, and then I've also trained on Revo Rebreather.
Oh, okay, okay. Tell me a little bit about that process, getting certified on the rebreather.
So rebreather diving again was a big learning curve, as it is for everybody. But I think it's honestly the best thing I've ever done. I absolutely, when it goes right and everything is quiet and you've got like perfect buoyancy, it is the most amazing feeling in the world. And I started rebreather diving purely on the basis that I needed it to go on shoots and to work, because you can get much longer dive times. You're quiet, so animals actually behave naturally, and it's just like a tool for the job. I chose Revo mainly because that's what everybody uses in TV. Everyone uses Revo. Parts are expensive, spares are expensive. So the fact that everyone's on the same unit, everyone can buy a bit of a spare, a bit of a spare, but someone will have something, someone will have something else, someone will have this. Everyone's on the same cells. So if you're something in your unit goes down or someone else's, you can then like trade basically to just help each other out. I learned in Egypt with a company called Tech Deep, and they actually the first time I went out to Egypt to do it, I was so excited. I could not wait to go. I've been saving up for this. I was like, finally going to go and do my rebreather training. And I'd booked a liverboard to do it on with Tech Deep. And I got out there, started doing the theory, and within 24 hours, I was like, oh my God, I really don't feel well. I really don't feel well. I was like, Natalie, just come on, like pull yourself together. You're fine. You're probably just a bit tired from like the stress of like flying here. You're feeling maybe a bit overwhelmed. And then I woke up the next day and I was like, I do not feel well at all. We'd already left the harbour by this time. I was stuck on this boat and I had the worst bout of COVID, I think, ever. I was done. I was so sick. They looked after me so much, but I spent the whole of my first, like the whole week, stuck in a cabin, just trying to recover. Whilst I could hear, obviously, it was a liverboard, so I was like quarantined in my room, couldn't go outside. And I could hear all of these people like going diving with dolphins and screaming and having a great time, and like the ribs rushing people off to the reef. And then we were moving overnight and we were going to this other beautiful dive site, and all I could hear was these people having a great time, and I was like hacking up in this cabin, and it was just awful. And I didn't do the training at all. I actually ended up staying on this boat for 10 days whilst I recovered before I could fly home. I left, put it all through insurance, got all my money back. Great. And then ended up going out like 6 months later and redoing it. I mean, I just accepted that the first time it clearly wasn't my time to learn, and like that was it. Fine, let it go. So I went out 6 months later and I learned with Tech Deep again. It was such an eye-opening experience. It's completely different how you dive. Your buoyancy's different. I feel like my breathing's different when I'm on rebreather because you're actually pushing the gas round and then into the scrubbers. You're managing your loop volume, and it is a very different mindset. You're having to purge a little bit as you're coming up. It's very, very different. And I definitely struggled at first. I was like, this isn't what I'm used to. I've never been someone who's very naturally talented at things. I've always had to really try. So I didn't really get to grips with it until like the third day. And everyone I told who I was going out was like, the first 2 days you'll probably want to cry. You just won't understand what's going on. Your buoyancy is going to be all over the place. You're going to be frustrated. You're not going to feel comfortable. You're going to feel like the thing's trying to kill you. I actually did feel like that for the first 2 days. By the end of the second day, I was standing in the shower after the dive. I was just like staring into space. Do I need to do this to myself? Am I going to be able to do this? And I was like, okay, just go to sleep, wake up in the morning, retry. And then honestly, it was like everybody had pre-warned me. By the end of the third day, something in you will just like snap and you'll get it. It's bizarre. It's actually bizarre. It was actually after the first dive on the third day. It was literally after the first dive. Everything just went boom, boom, boom. I just knew I felt like what I knew what I was doing. You have to drive to your Revo manually on the course. So you're managing your own PPO2, whereas a lot of the time when you're diving on jobs, you'll just put it into its own electrical mode and it will manage your PPO2 for you. But when you're learning, you have to be on top of it and know what you're breathing at all times. And now I actually prefer to dive that way, which is weird. I've gone back to how I learned. So you're just watching, you're constantly watching, like, okay, well, what am I breathing? Okay, well, I need to add a bit of O2. Okay, well, that's a bit, like, I need to purge this, add some O2, or I need to purge and add some dill now. You're, like, constantly, like, trying to look at what you're breathing and what you're mixing. I suddenly just got it. Like, I wasn't bumping along the floor of the reef anymore, like on the sandy bottom. I was actually able to float, and one of the biggest changes was your buoyancy, because you have all of this different air compartments. You have your different lung systems, and then you've got your loop, and then you've got your actual BCD as well, your wing. So you've got all of these different air compartments you're managing, and when you don't understand when you inject oxygen or dill into your system, is you're also then changing all of those volumes apart from your wing. So you're trying to just counterbalance constantly. And that's really difficult when you don't know what you're doing because you're learning and you're just bumbling along the bottom. And I have this thing where it sounds really, really cheesy now, but I did it on when I first started on open circuit as well. I always hold my instructor's hand for the first dive. You know, when you learn and you're trying to get your buoyancy and they're like, you need like a visual point of reference. And I just find it easier if I had someone else's like hand in my hand. So I think I did that for a little while. And I was able to like see how they were breathing, because you can feel how like they're going up and down with their breath, and you could sort of gauge, okay, well, they look like they have this much in their wing and they've got this amount of breath and they're not injecting at this moment in time, but they're on the same PPO2 as me, okay. Because you're so close to them, you can really gauge how you should be diving. It sounds really cheesy, but it's just like, it's really nice to just sit there and like actually be close to your instructor, so then you can actually gauge what they're doing. Like, they're not if they're like 5 meters away, how can I see like how they're breathing or how like they're doing something? So I'm always like, can you come here so I can just gauge it, and then I can go off, be a bit more confident. So I did that, and I think that really like helped. I did it on my open circuit as well when I was first learning, and that really helped me. Yeah, by the end of the third day I was like, great, I can not sit on the bottom or like fall across the seafloor. I can actually swim. I feel like I can breathe quite like easily, and it's not needing to like purge or maintain anything. Everything's just working for me. So I felt by the end of the week I did pass. Great. Everything went well. Like, there was a lot of people also flood their unit on the courses because you're doing a lot of drills, a lot of bailout drills where you're having to close your loop and take it out of your mouth, and then you're changing to your bailout, and all it takes is for you to leave your lever open on your loop when you take it out of your mouth, and then you've just flooded everything. And that happens a lot. So before I went, you get all of the material before you go. And I was literally, I'd be standing in the shower or doing something, and I'd be like, right, I need to change my bailout now. So I'm going to close my loop, take it out of my mouth, take my bailout out, put that in my mouth. Then I'm going to do the other thing. So I'm going to take my bailout out of my mouth, put that away, get my loop, purge, and then open loop. And I was just actively doing that all the time, because I was like, if you flood your unit on your course, you're done, you're out, because it takes 24 hours to dry out. You've maybe burnt the board because it's all electrical in there, and you end up with a huge bill and no course. I ingrained that into myself before I even left the country, that I was not going to leave that loop open. So if anyone's thinking about doing the course, that is my top tip. Just don't leave your loop open ever.
So, my last question for you before I let you go, and thank you very much for coming onto the podcast today. So, as somebody that has gone pretty far and done some amazing things in cinematography, what advice would you have for somebody that is just starting out in this business, or it's something that they're looking into? What is the best piece of advice that you could give to that person?
I would say if you want to work in this industry and you're desperately trying to break in, number one, don't compare yourself to anybody else. I definitely struggled with that when I was breaking in. I was like, how has this person managed to do it? And I kind of like maybe got a bit fixated on the fact that if I did this route, that will work because it worked for someone else. Now that I'm in the industry, when you speak to a lot of people, everyone's route is different. Whatever you do is not a wrong step. Everything will lead you to your own path, and there is no right or wrong way to get into this industry. There's no straight line. It is a constant zigzag of, you might be doing good one day and then you might not get a chance the next time. So don't give up when you then don't get a chance next time, because you never know when you're going to have your next chance to meet someone or speak to anybody or learn something new that will help you get to your next stage. Definitely don't compare yourself. Just try your best to put yourself in the best positions you can, to get as much experience as you can, to get to know as many people as you can, and make genuine connections with people. Most of my friends now, my best friends, are in this industry, and we have an amazing support group, and we all want the best for each other. We're all going for the same jobs. But it doesn't matter, because I want them to do well and I want them to have the chance, because one day it might be them and then one day it might be me. And we just have this really lovely network. So find people who share your passion with you, find people who can support you and you support them, and don't give up.
That is some amazing advice. And Natalie, thank you very, very much. Once again, I really, really appreciate you coming onto the podcast. I hope you had a great time, and I look forward to future conversations.
Thank you so much for having me on, and yeah, I'll talk to you again soon.
Offgassing, a scuba podcast.